So welcome to this chapter where we're going to talk about our lovely model here, Deborah. Now, Deborah's quieter than most models, but very attractive nonetheless. So what I want to do now is take you through some of the lights I use in my core kit and just show you the different effects you can achieve with them. So straight away, we're going to start with the dado light. Now this is 150 watts, direct straight onto Deborah's face. As you can see, it's not a bad looking light. We're getting a good exposure on Deborah's face, but you can see by the nose shadow that it's a very hard light. Now, the thing about the dado light is it is a hard light source, but there's a soft quality to it, which I really like. And I think it's because the lens is focusing the light. It's not unattractive on our lovely model Deborah here, but it is a little bit harsh. And a hard light on female subjects is not something you tend to want to use. On male subjects, hard light on a kind of aged face can look very dramatic. Well, the first thing I can do is use this very inexpensive light disc and just throw this in front of the light. So what I'm doing there is turning that hard light source into a soft light source. But you'll notice the intensity of the light has dropped down quite considerably. The IRE here on the waveform monitor is way down at about 25%, not anywhere near bright enough to get a good exposure. So to make this light brighter, we have to move it physically closer. And this is where the inverse square law comes into being. The inverse square law suggests that if you move the light closer in, so let's say we've got a 2 meter gap here, we move it a meter in, we don't just double the light output, we actually quadruple it. So by moving it in physically closer, we should get to a point where the light is high enough quality to get a good exposure. We're a little bit off there, so let me just open up the barn doors. By just physically opening the barn doors, I'm letting more light out of the lens. And there we go, that's looking like a nice exposure on her face. We're not getting anything peaking or clipping, and we've got a nice reading of about 55–60% of her skin tone. As you can see here, it's a very pleasing look. Now what we've done is we've really softened that nose shadow compared to the previous shot. But the byproduct of diffusing this light is it's spread across the background. We can see this white disc is diffusing the light in all directions. So what we have to do is think of a way to control the light spilling onto the white background. And this is where our flag comes in. This is our Matthews Road Rags kit with our mini grip kit. So what we can do is clamp this onto this stand which I've set up. It's always a little bit fiddly. And place that onto there and tighten that off. Now what I'm going to do is use this flag to position this so that I can take that light off the background. What you can see in this shot now, as I flag the light, it's actually taking the spill off the background, but not actually coming into frame. So I'll tighten that off there. And what that should do is turn my white background black, and it has. So it's a very interesting point here. You know, controlling light to an advanced level is as much for me about what you don't like as what you do. We've now turned this hard light source into a soft light source. We can see from the nose shadow that it's softer, and we've taken the spill off the background. But for me, this is still quite a hard lighting setup. So let's move on to the next light, which is the softbox, to just compare the difference that that makes compared to a direct light through this disc of diffusion. Now, turning a hard light into a soft light is a very easy thing to do, as we've seen. But for me, the most flattering way to light our beautiful model is using a softbox. Now, as we described earlier, this is a softbox 150 watts, very efficiently pumping the light and really evenly distributing the light across the front of this baffle. And as you can see here, the difference is subtle, but I think very significant. The nose shadow is much, much softer, and the skin just seems to respond much more beautifully to a nice, even, soft source. But if we wanted to control that even more, we could put the fabric grid on. Now, this is going to give us what I call classic Rembrandt lighting. And if you're ever fortunate enough to go to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam and see the original Rembrandts, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. It's that single point source of soft light that hits the subject and vignette. So you get a bright spot in the middle of the frame and it darkens off to the edges. Now, as before, the fabric grid will control and sort of funnel that light a bit like a barn door into the subject, but you will drop down in some illumination. So I'm going to just pop back to the monitor here, and yeah, and you've dropped down about 20%. So you don't lose quite as much as just diffusing from a hard light source, but you do need to move that source in a little bit closer, twist that round. It becomes very directional. You look on the background there, you've got this kind of source that vignettes off to the edge. And as you bring this round to the sweet spot of the light, we've got, yeah, bang on there. Now, we've got a little bit of light pollution on the background, and the only way to remove that is to simply move the light around the side of our model. Now, this does make the light a little more side on, but we've got our background being dark and black, and if we wanted to, we could simply bring in a reflector on this side of the image, and that would fill in those shadows. But what I'm looking at here is simply the quality of the light output from this fixture. Now, a little extra tip here. Soft light wraps around our subject. So if we put that on the side, it's kind of like almost defying logic. You see there's quite a harsh line there, but it is lighting straight round here. As we bring the light around, there's my cables, to there, the light does start to wrap around her face. And what I love about this is it's just the shape you get from her jawline, and you'll notice we've still got light in both eyes. Let me grab my reflector just over here, just to show you what you can do with a little bit of fill light. So just using this pop-up reflector, we can simply bring that in here, and that just fills the shadows on this side of the face. A very, very simple one light setup with a reflector. Now, if we want to use a bit of a harder reflector on this side, we could take that silver side, angle it slightly further back, and create some modeling on her face. So very, very simple techniques for taking that one single light source and creating what I think is a very beautiful cinematic looking light. And tungsten light like this gives you the full color spectrum, and the soft quality of this light is very, very flattering, particularly on female skin tones. So if you're going to light a lady, especially a lady of advancing years, then a soft light source and some nice soft fill, and she will absolutely love you for it, and frankly hire you again and again. Now we're going to look at the S.C.A.L.E light, which is a fairly new LED fixture from Kinoflow. We're set here to 3200 Kelvin, and we're using the 60-degree grid. This is looking very pleasing to me. It looks ever so slightly warmer than the tungsten softbox, but bear in mind we haven't got the reflector in on this shot. I think what's nice about this is we've got this lovely quality of light. It's a beautiful soft source, nice nose shadow. Let me just show you quickly. If I take the 60-degree grid off here and look at the whole scene, then clearly what we're doing is the face still looks pretty good. It's a little bit hotter, but we're obviously lighting up the background, and that white's going grey. If we use this is the 90-degree grid, it won't focus the light quite as much as the 60. So what we'll get is a little bit more pollution on the back of shot. So the advantage of using the 60-degree is that it focuses the light more, and you can see, Fred, that the 90-degree grid is slightly fatter circles than the 60-degree. So the very nature of that means that on this fixture you're getting a slightly more focused light on our lovely model here. And what we've got now with that 60-degree grid is the background has gone black and not grey, just so we can match up the last shot. So by bringing a little bit of reflected light in from the S.C.A.L.E, we've got this nice source. Now, of course, the key feature of the S.C.A.L.E is the ability to change the intensity of the light and dim the light up or down without affecting color balance. Now that's too dark, so we'll bring that back up to 100%. But if we wanted to change the color temperature, we could easily dial up further, 4,000, all the way up to 5,500 Kelvin. What we've got there is a very blue looking scene because we've got a tungsten setting in the camera, but we're applying a daylight source. So what you're able to do is just dial that into whatever color you want your light to be, and it's very, very even. Bring that back to 3,200, and there we go. So a really nice fixture, but let's just say your budget won't stretch quite to this celeb light. There is another alternative, and that's the Diva light, which is a fluorescent fixture. I want to show you that now to wrap this chapter up. Now, as with all lighting at this level, there are pros and cons to each fixture. This is a Diva light. This has been something that I've been using for, well, certainly since about 2003. Fluorescent fixture, very good output of light and very good consistency of color. This is the Diva Light 401, so it's a slight modification on the older Diva lights. We've got this new grid, the plastic grids here. This is a 60-degree grid, so that focuses the light a bit more. It's dimmable completely without any major shift in color. Now, the difference with this is you can't easily power this from battery because there's a lot more power required to get the tubes up to color. So that's where the LED on the Celeb light may prove to be a better option. But nonetheless, this is a good option. It takes tungsten tubes or daylight tubes, and you can mix them into what they call salt and pepper. So you can go tungsten tube, daylight tube, tungsten tube, daylight tube. Very useful in a mixed lighting situation where you want to enhance the lighting. Great output, very nice for lighting more than one person in an interview. And Fred, if you just step back there, we can see the effect on our lovely model Deborah here. Now what we're seeing here is a slight spill on the background. So what I can do is I can turn the light like so, and there are some barn doors on this which I can shut down and control the light so it's not hitting the background. And there we go, we've got our background nice and black again, and a nice soft source across Deborah's face. So just again, another solution for low power consumption. It's certainly an even, nice, high output quality of light. And as I say, if you can't quite stretch to the Celeb light, then Diva lights have been a mainstay of TV production for a very long time, still prove to be a very good solution today, and certainly as a kind of versatile source you can travel with, you can't really go wrong with a Diva light.